I got a great question from someone, and the question was, what events in your life led you on this inner journey of consciousness, spirituality, and growth? So I wanted to use this video to answer that question. This video is going to be about my spiritual journey and how I got started with it. So ever since I was young, I was always really interested in spiritual topics. I didn't really consciously think of them as spiritual things. I just knew that they were things that I was really interested in. So for example, when I was about 10 years old, I was the type of girl who was on astrology forums, learning more about astrology, my zodiac sign, all of that. I remember learning about numerology when I was really young. I also, even for some time, was learning about palm reading. Like, I just loved this stuff, and I didn't really think much of it other than I just found it really fascinating. So I think I always had that inclination to be open to spiritual topics, but I wasn't really consciously thinking about it as like a spiritual thing. I just thought it was fun. Another thing that is really important to know about my story is that I actually grew up in a family that didn't really have a lot of money. And so I lived in one apartment complex for most of my life. I didn't even have my own room until I got to college. Like, I lived in the living room for most of my life. And so it was interesting because my physical reality just wasn't matching up with what I felt deeply inside, because deep inside I always felt like I was made for more. So I think from a young age I was definitely very driven. I wanted to be successful, and success to me at that time mainly meant money, because I saw my parents struggling so much financially, and I knew that I wanted a better life for myself. I wanted a better life for my family. I remember thinking, why is it that 1% of the world's population has so much wealth, so much abundance, and yet the majority of people don't? I had this hypothesis in my mind that success wasn't this thing that just happened randomly to people, that it was something that you can learn from, that success leaves clues. And so I started researching about really successful people. I started learning about their mindset. I started learning about the habits that they did. I started getting really interested because I wanted to learn how to improve myself, how to improve my life, how to live a more abundant, happier, meaningful life for myself. I also really had low self-esteem when I was growing up. I had a very unflattering haircut when I was younger, and that led to a lot of bullying, led to me feeling very much an outsider. And it took me a long time to really start to rebuild myself. It was during this time when I would tell myself things like, I am beautiful, I am confident, and it felt so fake at the time, but it ended up working because I started to believe it. I started to really feel like I was worth something. And I know that it sounds really silly, but I came from a point where I just felt like I had hit rock bottom. There was a lot of reasons why that happened, but that's essentially what it felt like. I'd spent many years rebuilding myself, and finally, they say that when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And during my senior year of high school, I took a philosophy class, and it was in that class that I was introduced to a concept that would end up making such a big difference, and that is the law of attraction. So my teacher was this guy who used to work on Wall Street, and he was really wealthy and very well educated. He was so unlike a lot of people who I had met at the time. He was the one who really started me on this journey of consciously thinking about spirituality, and really created this domino effect that has led me to where I am today. So I'm so thankful that I was able to take that class. I'm so thankful that I was introduced to the law of attraction at the time that I was. And so if you are not familiar with what the law of attraction is, I am planning to make a whole video about it because it is something that warrants its own video. But just to give you a quick summary, it's just this idea that your thoughts create your reality. What you think, what you believe in, more importantly, really becomes your reality. There's a lot of things that go into the law of attraction, but if you really just want to think about it as a simple thing for now, just for the sake of this story, learning that principle, learning that law just was this mind-blowing thing. I remember that my teacher introduced me to the movie The Secret. Like, he mentioned it during class once, and I think maybe a lot of people in that class might have just shrugged it off, completely dismissed it, but there was something inside of me that was curious about it. And so I remember going home and I watched the movie The Secret online somewhere, and it was just mind-blowing. If you haven't watched it yet, I think it's a great introduction to the law of attraction. I think it's important to define what spirituality even means to me. So I think for me at this point, spirituality is my connection to the universe, it's my connection to myself, and really about becoming the highest, truest version of myself. That's sort of the simple way that I would put it. I know that, everyone has their own beliefs, their own religions, philosophies that they abide by. This is the way that I have decided to view my life. I really believe in just finding things that most resonate with me, things that feel true to me. And I know that when I found out about the law of attraction, that felt like it was true to me. Like, it resonated so deeply with me, and I could go back to different points in my life and understand how I was able to manifest, how I was able to create something because of my beliefs, because of my thoughts. And so learning about the law of attraction around the time when I was 16 was a game changer for me. And that really started me on this journey of consciously learning more about spirituality. So once I got to college, I started really delving deep into the law of attraction, really learning more about it. I watched videos about it. I would listen to podcasts. I would read books about law of attraction, spirituality. I just was so fascinated by this subject. And I think one of the reasons why is because I started practicing it. So it's one thing to just know about something conceptually, but to practice it, to experiment with manifesting things into your life, with figuring out how different thoughts, how different practices can actually lead to real outcomes in your physical reality. That process, the manifestation process, was so cool to me, and I absolutely loved it. But one of the things that happened to me was that I remember manifesting all these things into my life, things like internships, like the exact piece of guidance that I needed or a sign that I needed. All these are really amazing things, and I was so excited and so enthusiastic about it. But I remember, at least during my college years, for the most part, I didn't really have anyone that I could talk to about it. And when I did try to mention it in a conversation, it was very much dismissed, or people just didn't quite understand it. And then I think at a time when I was still trying to form my confidence in my ability to manifest things and my confidence in the spirituality that I practice, that was really hard, because I think community is such an important part of this, or at least makes it a lot easier when you're just starting out. I remember it wasn't until after college, when I moved to San Francisco, that I started to find people who were more interested in these types of topics, who knew about things like the law of attraction, who were interested in spirituality. And that was a game changer. Finding my people, finding people who resonated with what I was interested in, was just such an amazing thing and definitely helped propel me in my own spiritual growth. That's another reason why I wanted to make this channel, actually, is because I remember how it felt like when I was starting my own spiritual awakening and starting to get really interested in spirituality and learning about things like the law of attraction, and not having anyone who I could really go to for guidance, or not really having anyone who I could relate to about this. And so I'm hoping that through this video and through future videos to come, that I can be a resource for you if you are just starting your spiritual journey. Even if you've been on it for a while, I think it's nice to just hear other people's stories. So that is some of the highlights of how I started my journey into spirituality, into consciousness, into personal growth. I hope that this gives you a sense of where I'm coming from with all of this spirituality stuff. And I hope that you enjoyed learning more about me and my story.